Are you ready to go, Tom? Whenever you tell me. Okay, so this is the Thursday, July 16th meeting of the Planning Resources and Development Committee. I see from our screen that all members are present. And we have our YouTube connection in place. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order and begin with approval of the minutes from the May 26th, 2020 meeting. Anyone have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, this is Diane Morehouse. I'll approve the minutes of May 26th.
Thank you, Diane. Is there a second?
This is Mike. I will second it.
Supervisor Kinnear. Any discussion, corrections? Did someone say something? I think. Mike?
No, I didn't say anything.
Okay, all right. Any questions or corrections? Okay. Hearing none, I think. So all in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Opposed? No? Okay. Then they carry. Public hearing, we have none today. And we have a new item that got added to the agenda that we're gonna move. So we will start with the staff report, starting with our guest, John Sipolf. And then Keith, we have a budget adjustment for land and water conservation that will move up on the agenda so Mr. Strike can give us our comments and get on with his day. So starting off with John, please take it away. You're on, John. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Jen. Go ahead, Jen.
I'd like to first thank you guys for having me on your agenda. What I would like to talk about is our 2021 What I would like to talk about today is our 2021 EQIP planning meeting, or known as our local work group meeting. Last year we had several of our LCC members come to our meeting up in Barron for an opportunity to put input of where and how NRCS should spend their monies for our local work group, which consists of Barron County, Polk County, St. Croix County, Dunn County, as well as Rusk County. So last year there was a conservative effort to look at how we prioritize our funds, looking at trying to promote more conservation with our $1 million roughly of federal funding that comes into our local work group. The committee, our local work group, oh, go ahead. Was there a comment?
No, you're okay.
Going back, so basically our local work group is in charge of directing how our funds are spent and how we should prioritize our funds. Last year, a recommendation coming from our local work group is we should prioritize applications that are utilizing cover crops, no-till, and nutrient management planning from a priority, and prioritize those applications. That came through local work group, went to our state tech committee, which was viewed as favorable, and that recommendation stuck. So this year we were prioritizing our applications to basically, I'd say, the trifecta of our water quality practices that we can have here in Dunn County. So I guess kudos to our local work group for making that recommendation, making that stick. If there's other conservation issues that the PR&D would like to see elevated or maybe put more priority on this year, basically this is our opportunity to have that meeting and voice your concerns. With COVID-19 this year, we are trying a virtual meeting, kind of very similar to today, where you guys can, or people can dial in and basically listen to and see how everything was divvied out, how funds were spent, and then at the end of it have a opportunity to welcome public feedback on what you think worked, what you think didn't work, and offer suggestions and feedback for the 2021 EQIP funding pools. In addition to that, our other programs will also be talked about. There'll probably be an update on our WRP program, our wetland restoration program. There would be an update on our CSP program and how funds are being prioritized there. And just the overall general NRCS programs and how things are working from an NRCS perspective that way. So it gives a good overview of what NRCS is doing and how things are proceeding on our end. And I believe Tom sent the link to the virtual meeting in the packet, as well as you can see it on the screen here. So if you guys got any questions, give me a shout, or if there's any questions now, I can try to take them now if anyone has anything to add.
Any questions or comments?
Anderson, I do have a question of John. You mentioned, I think I was trying to write them down, 4 counties. Rusk County is included in this area. Is that correct? They're not usually in our area, are they?
Yes. They are for our programs right now. So it would be Polk and St. Croix,
Right,
Dunn and Barron,
right.
and Rusk County.
Thank you.
Yes, correct. Those 5.
Okay, any other questions?
Tom, this is Dan. I would just like to say, you know, the concept of having no-till cover crops and nutrient management all in those signups, I think is something that we should support. It supports soil health and, you know, a lot of the things that we do. And John, I guess a question for you, is there any flack statewide from us being treated different than other states or other counties that way? Or do you see a fear in that?
I think the northwest part of Wisconsin was the first, I'd say, area of the state to move down that, I would say, water quality route. I think other DCs, from what I've talked to, are liking the idea, and I think they're going to be trying to implement that as they move forward with their programs into the future. So I could potentially see us even ratcheting down even more and becoming more, you know, asking for more conservation with our funds. I guess that would be up to you guys, you know, as a local work group or participants within the local work group, if you think that's something that we should ratchet down even more and ask for more conservation out of our farmers. Or, you know, to me, I think we have a good balance. It gives guys and growers something to shoot for. We still have strong interest in no-till. We still have strong interest in cover crops. The nutrient management side of things, there's growing pains. So we're still trying to work through some of those growing pains. And Dan can attest to that too with his programs and his nutrient management planning. So yeah, I mean, there's things that crept up on us that we never thought of, but I think we're in a good spot, you know, good direction moving forward. So it does leverage a lot of conservation that way. So, you know, I think just this year we had 5,000 acres of cover crops, no-till, and nutrient management being applied for through Dunn County here, not counting what the other counties had. So, you know, maybe 10,000 total acres in the Red Cedar watershed, which is a huge, huge move forward when you start talking about implementation and how we can start leveraging some of those monies.
Mhm. Great, thank you.
And as a testament to that, you know, through my travels throughout the Dunn County, at least, I have seen a significant more of no-till this year out on the landscape than I had in previous years. So I'm not saying it's, you know, because of our equip, but, you know, I think it's a testament to the LCD office or the Land and Water office, as well as the NRCS office, and then having guys see some of the benefits of that too. So hopefully that can continue on into the future.
John, I'm wondering, we've put begun putting a fair amount of consideration and emphasis on managed grazing as a strategy, and you have programs that assist with that. Is that an appropriate point to bring up at this meeting?
Yeah, it is. So I guess right now, so the fund pools that we can control locally at the local work group level would be our cropland fund pool, our pasture fund pool, as well as our forestry fund pool. So when we start looking at how we prioritize our funding, we can take within that local work group confines, we can set aside how many dollars we want to go in each one of those fund pools. For example, let's say we wanted to prioritize prescribed grazing. Maybe last year we only put $50,000 in prescribed grazing. Maybe we want to see that shift up to $200,000, so we can prioritize more grazing and getting more grazing on the ground. And then the flip side of that, though, is it takes it away from the cropland side of things. So it's kind of got an ebb and flow of where things are going to be and how do we prioritize. I agree with you. Having prescribed grazing out there, getting cropland converted to grass is it's a big win from a water quality standpoint and from a soil quality standpoint. The flip side of that, though, too, is we also need the applications on file in order to support those requests too. So that's one of the things that we play in a balancing act here, is as we move forward with some of our funding decisions, we look at what the local work group wants, but then we also look at the applications that we have on file, trying to balance, okay, this individual needs $10,000, this individual needs $100,000, or this county, so we can try to prioritize. If prescribed grazing was set to be a priority, then we can look at prioritizing our funding to fund all of the grazing plans versus, or all the grazing people versus maybe some forestry people or some cropland people.
Right. Okay.
We also come back and look at the land and water plan too, and how does each county's land and water plan play into the funding decisions we have. So, you know, I think our land and water plan is probably 5-6 years old right now, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we did have soil health and soil quality as part of our priorities within our land and water plan. So we still try to adhere to what the county's land and water plan offers as well.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Okay. Thanks for taking the time to join us, John. And if you want to stay around, you're welcome. But if you have other things to do, that's fine too. Then we'll move on. If it's without objection, we could move number 7 up at this point in time in the agenda so that we can hear from Mr. Stray and let him get on with his day. This is a budget adjustment from Water Conservation Division.
Yeah, this is, and Keith was on vacation last week, so he wasn't a big part of this, but Sarah helped us out quite a bit. And Nick took a look at this resolution, but each year we're eligible for about $87,000 of trail maintenance money from the Snowmobile Association for maintaining the 290 miles of trails in Dunn County. And when we have a winter like last year with a lot of snow and the trails are open a long time, the costs go way over that. So then they can dip into what they call the supplemental trail maintenance. It goes above and beyond your annual grant. And this year, the maximum that Dunn County Snowmobile Association, they went over their costs by $35,000. And so we will be putting in an application to try and recoup up to that amount. So that's what this is for. And the first half of that money would come in September. Being no county board meeting in August, I tried to get this through last week at the last minute, because we didn't find out about this until about last Tuesday, I think it was. So that was kind of why we had a little rush on this resolution.
Okay.
So Keith, I don't know if you want to add anything, but
Anything, Keith?
Not really. This is pretty straightforward. This is nothing new. This is just going through the process to establish the budgetary authority if it's approved.
yes.
Well, let's have a motion to approve first. Is that a motion?
This is Supervisor Morehouse. I will move approval of this budget adjustment for environmental services.
Thank you, Diane. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Jim. Any discussion? Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? No? Okay, that carried, and we're taking care of that. Thanks a lot for sitting in, Keith. And now on to the item B, Register of Deeds monthly report. Is Heather available?
I'm here.
Okay, you're on.
I guess I don't really have anything to add. It's been busy with refinancing, so we've been seeing a lot more documents for recording, and
Okay.
yeah, so I was just comparing last June, June of 19 to June of 2020. I think we recorded 300 more documents in June of 2020, so that gives you a little bit of a idea. But yeah,
Okay.
other than that, that's about all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? All right, thanks, Heather. Other department division reports. Maybe just a quick, well, I guess, are there any questions from, let's go through them one at a time. Then the Land and Water Conservation Division. Dan, do you have any, since you're on, do you have any comments about that?
I don't have any additional comments. I guess I did put in here, I think we're getting requests for grazing, and a challenge is finding someone right now to approve a grazing plan. That's a need that I see out there. I guess I would like to recognize Janelle too for being here for 40 years. That's a milestone, and she does a great job with all these grants and keeping everything and moving and in line for the finances that we deal with.
I appreciate
A
that.
little bit on the groundwater study too. We've had a lot of trouble with concentrations, making sure that what was put on the lab sheets that we were going to send to the landowners matched what was on the spreadsheet that the lab sent us. There was discrepancies, and then one was way out of whack, and we just got that one today. So now the landowners will be notified from phase 2 of the results of those are the 20 samples that were sampled for human indicators and for ag indicators.
Okay.
And we will be getting a report hopefully next committee meeting on at least the findings of that.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Your manager's question. Okay, Dan, reading your letter again on the middle of the third paragraph, you talked about looking into holding a field day for farmers at the Jeff Lake demonstration farm. And I understand that was outstanding last year. And my question is, you're calling this a demonstration farm, and are you saying that, is there a sign out there? I haven't driven by there lately that calls this a demonstration farm. And then also, there's been a lot of good publicity lately on Jeff Lake Farm and what they've done, you know, way back.
Mhm.
Chamber of Commerce recognized them, which I remember strongly putting their name in for them. I guess my question is, if we've got that as a demonstration farm, is there a sign out there? I didn't remember seeing it that calls it that, so people driving by will see it.
Okay. You know, we started with the Red Cedar Demonstration Farm about 5 years ago. And then in 2018, we wrote this lake protection grant for targeting the Red Cedar River drainage basin. And part of that grant was to establish 2 more demonstration farms. And one of them, Jeff Lake stepped up before, so we had a letter from him in the application saying that he would do this. And then Tristan and Bill Byer in the town of Grant have stepped up and have been our second demonstration farm for that grant. We looked into several options for a sign, but we have not, we weren't able to find grant money to pay for one. Okay, so we haven't got a sign up there yet, Jim. That's true. But we
And
have
I understand that it takes money, and I'm not critical. I'm just saying now, we call the Byer Farm a demonstration farm. We call the Jeff Lake a demonstration farm, and then we've got one right outside our judicial center here in Menominee on our own county land. We call it a demonstration farm too, don't we?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So we have how many in the county?
3.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to, I think it would be nice, and it costs money to buy signs, and I understand, to publicize this some way. If there are a lot of people I talk to that don't have a clue about this. And I think, well, we're doing more than the public knows. And, you've done a great job in recognizing these people. I'm giving you a compliment. I'm saying if we ever could find the money for 3 signs that would say, here's Dunn County Demonstration Farms and look what we're doing. That's my only comment. Thank you.
I will comment that the Red Cedar Demonstration Farm was paid for by a grant, actually a family that made a donation to the Tanner-Monoman Lake Improvement Association, and they wanted it to be for education. So we built that sign with that donation from.
Yeah, thank you.
Those are good points, Jim. Thanks for bringing up.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Dan.
just a request, Dan. Perhaps briefly, I'm sure she's busy, but perhaps briefly at our next meeting, we might be able to say hello to Heather Wood.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good point, Dan. Okay, the next monthly report was planning and zoning. Bob, I see you're on. Do you have anything you want to draw attention to?
I guess just a couple. There's a typo in there. One of the things under CR&T broadband, we actually got notification on July 10th instead of June 10th for our broadband forward certification, which I think is a good feather in Dunn County's cap for broadband. I guess I would just like to have the committee understand, the impacts of COVID to our office, with staff being at home and a large portion of our data or files is paper. What used to be is, when staff are in the office, they would be in those files multiple times in a day, and now working from home, those requests come to me, and so a big chunk of my day. And I didn't realize, just how much time is spent in those files because I wasn't in those files on a regular basis. But I bring this up only because as we get to the budget later on this year, there is a line item in our budget to have those files scanned, which would free up staff's time because plumbers would be able to access those files. They could just get the information they need. Developers could get the information they need. Real estate agents could get that also information. They wouldn't need to contact staff. It would just be available through a portal. And I guess the other thing that I just wanted is that our workload really has not slowed down. From COVID. We are in the report they talk about that. We're averaging two expedited inspections a day with Cedar Corporation. We're now up to since this report, we're up to like 6 on average a week that we're going to Cedar Corporation on, and we're already in the 150s for this year compared to last year, all of last year, where it was 222. So we don't really have a good number on sanitation yet, but at the next month I'll be able to report really what we're doing with sanitation. But I just really wanted to speak to the impacts of the workload to COVID now that staff are working from home. And with that, I guess I will take any questions if there are any.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment and a question, if you will, please.
Sure.
Well, as chairman of the committee of CR&T, working closely with this committee and the highway, Bob Colson said we became Broadband Forward certified. And thanks a lot to Bob Colson for his leadership and all the hard work he did on that. It certainly made, I think, our job a whole lot easier, and yet I know how much he worked. And it's a big deal. It is really a big deal. I noticed down there under other that Bob Colson says on June 10th, we received confirmation from Public Service that Dunn County is Broadband Forward certified. Now, I think, Bob, that should be July 10th, is it not?
Yes, Mr. Anderson, and I thought I started off that was a correction, that was a typo. It is actually July 10, you're correct.
Okay, thank you. So I compliment, thank you, Bob, for getting all that done. Now it has gone through, and it's made a big deal of difference. I can let the rest of this committee know, because those that have already received grants and applied for permits before this, I got comments, and a lot of people did, about how high the permit fees were. And now with Broadband Forward, this is really making them very happy. I think that now with COVID-19 and everything, with all the people working from home, and it has affected the entire county a great deal. And this is, and I really want to commend Bob Colson, as busy as he is, for putting together all the hard work and getting it done. And I think that now Dunn County is the 11th county in the state of Wisconsin to be Broadband Forward certified. And that's going to really make a big deal. And I'm so happy about this that I just have to share it with everybody. And I will be at Mr. Chairman, at our executive meeting and our county board meeting, of what a big deal I think this is. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good points. And I know, I think we all know that Bob worked really hard on that. So mission accomplished so far. Any other questions about this report? Excuse me. Then I guess the survey division is next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's mainly been business as usual for the survey division. I'll echo what Bob Colson had said. It's been extremely busy, lots of maps coming in, certified survey maps for review. Not only that, but just general maps coming in that need to be filed. So yeah, we are extremely busy, and then trying to stay ahead of all the field work. Troy and Greg have been outside every day when the weather allows. So like I say, business as usual. One thing that has been different in the last month is I've been spending a lot of my time working with Corp Counsel on the draft land division ordinance, which we will be discussing here shortly. So have put a lot of time into that, which of course takes me away from my normal work duty. So it's been quite hectic for the last month, but we're making the best, making do with what we have. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Thanks, Tom. Much appreciated. The next item is the
Mr.
annual
Chair?
report. Yeah, yes, I'm sorry.
If you may, I can do a solid waste monthly report.
Could you, Megan? That'd be great.
yes.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Megan Hines, recycling specialist with Dunn County Solid Waste and Recycling. I know Morgan was unable to complete a monthly report. We've been very busy out at the transfer station. With COVID, garbage has not stopped. It has probably increased, I would say. Not as much commercial trash, but much more residential trash, and a lot of people cleaning out their basements with their extra time and lack of activities to do besides cleaning. So a couple of highlights of the last month. We're continuing to work from home and in the office. Staff are doing a couple of days in the office as needed and a couple of days at home. We're also working out at our sites as needed. It seems to be working well. We've been kind of work through a lot of our processes to be able to either do things out at the transfer station or by mail and over the phone. So we have not really had a huge need to be in the office every day. So it's why we've been continuing to alternate our schedules. There was a compliance issue that was brought forward in very end of June, first week of July, about housekeeping out at the transfer station. A resident made a complaint to the DNR, and we were able to get everything cleaned up in about 4 days time, and got the pictures that we needed to the DNR, and the complaint has been resolved and closed. And we've been working, we have a gal who's doing some community service hours out at the transfer station, helping to keep the yard cleaned up now that we have it all spruced up. And we've reached out to the district attorney's office and working with the deferred prosecution folks to get our names on the list for people who need those community service hours, because we consistently have plenty of work for people to do picking up trash around our facility. So we're hoping to maintain that moving forward. And the other big thing we've been working on is we're really continuing to work with our municipal partners, the town chairs and village presidents, et cetera, who are part of our responsible unit, working through our per capita fees, what that's going to be, what they want to see for collection site hours and models, and then, you know, having them work through those decisions on whether or not to remain with our program. We are working with the Wisconsin DNR. They are currently reviewing the legality of whether or not municipalities can leave our program or not. We're anticipating that decision later this month, and have another meeting with our municipal chairs at the end of the month on July 30th. We're hoping to have a timeline of, we've provided them with the per capita numbers based on our current budget numbers. And then we're hoping by the end of August, municipalities will be giving us the yes or no if they're in our program, so we can calculate the final per capita numbers in early September to get to the towns so they can do their budget planning. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Questions? Okay, thanks a lot, Megan. Then we'll move on to the next item, which is the Environmental Services Department Annual Report, which we have as a printed document. And this will be in the packet for all of the board members this month. It's a long document, but I wonder whether, Tom, we could maybe go through each section and just ask if the committee members have any questions or comments on it, and then move on. So, yeah. Planning and land use. Any questions in this section?
This is Mike. Can you hear?
Yep.
I guess this is for Dan. I don't know quite where this is. I'm looking at it on my computer too, but
We lost you, Mike.
Sorry about that. Probably on page 11. Land and Water Conservation Division organizational chart. There's no water quality specialist listed, and I'm just wondering why that is.
The water quality specialist is a conservation planner's. We have a conservation planner, water quality specialist, conservation planner, nutrient management specialist, and a conservation planner, soil health specialist. So they're all in that one category.
Thank you. Didn't want to lose her.
No.
Other questions on this section, this division? Survey division? Any questions? Comments? Solid waste. And then land and water conservation. Okay. Any comments or general comments about the report?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
This is Diane. I just want to compliment the staff. I read this pretty carefully last night, and I think it's it's very informative. It's really well done, and thank you from the committee for putting together a really helpful report.
Anybody else?
Well, Mr. Chairman, being a newest member on this committee and the most to learn, I'm going to say I am also very impressed, as Diane is. And I think that we've done more, and more has been done than many of the people in the public know. And I will also go on record as saying, job well done. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to, as chair, I want to echo those comments. I think this was a really, really well done document that really brought together all of the pieces of our work and in a really readable format. And I know it took a lot of time. I just really think we all really appreciate the staff's work during this busy and difficult time. And we will be able to use this document in many places. So thanks a lot. It's really, really good work. Any staff have comments they'd like to insert that didn't get mentioned here? Okay, then we'll send this out to the board, and it'll be figure out how. Obviously, we aren't going to be presenting as we have in the past, but there'll be an opportunity for the board to ask questions and other comments. Okay. Anything else? Okay, with that, then let's move on to 5E, Corporation Counsel. The idea here was we've asked our Corporation Counsel to do a lot of work, and we're not the only committee that's asking him and his office to do a lot of work. So we thought it would be perhaps before we move into talking about one of his bigger pieces of work, time to just sort of get an update from Nick on where he's at with some of the projects and what his view is of the workload that he's being saddled with. So Nick, I'll turn it over to you if you want to comment on that.
Thank you. Well, as Tom Carlson mentioned, he and I have spent a considerable amount of time working on the land division ordinance. It's something that we've been working on for quite some time, and we really focused in on it here in the last couple of weeks. I think there was about a 12-day period where he and I spent 60 or more hours together, working together, going through it line by line and talking through all the potential legal issues that might come up. Sometimes his logic prevailed and sometimes mine did, but we got a good, I think we've got a good product. It's incomplete yet. We still need to work on conservation standards, which brings in the idea of having wetland preservation regulations that have been suggested in the past. I've gotten a model wetland protection ordinance, which is in rough form right now. And that's just been in the last, I guess, since we started really intensely working on the land division ordinance. One of the things that we had done in discussing public and private roads in the land division, I wanted to include a cross-reference to Chapter 23 in our ordinances, which is the uniform numbering system, and that was adopted in 2009, which is several years before I became the corporation counsel, when I discovered that Chapter 23 doesn't actually require roads to have numbers. I mean, it's a good thing. I think it's fortuitous that all of the towns have enacted or adopted policies to have the roads numbered within the county, and that they start uniformly in the southwest corner of the county. But I've already talked to the land information officer, Mr. Kochaver, and he agrees that we should fill in some missing information in that ordinance just to make it official. It's very difficult to require someone who's drafting a plat or a map to follow a rule that we don't actually have. So that's already, I'm actually working on that right now. I've been asked to work by the facilities committee to work on an ordinance regarding parks. A few years ago, I addressed the executive committee and talked about how so very many of the ordinances that Dunn County has are not codified. The Code of Ordinances is a book that's continuously updated. Whenever an ordinance changes, you type in the new text and you throw away the old pages and put in the new ones. And it's kind of an anchor resource that is always available. You know where it is, you know where to find what you're looking for, because it's indexed and organized, and the headings are user friendly, reader friendly. Most of Dunn County's ordinances, I think most, aren't in a code. They're scattered throughout the hundreds of documents published by the county clerk every year. Admittedly, some of the older ones go, the farther back in time you go, the less likely you are to find ordinances or resolutions that operate as ordinances, which would govern modern day Dunn County. But there may still be some. And so I have always continuously tried to bring in some of the ordinances that aren't in the code right now, but are still in effect. I mean, my short list for this year, I think I promised you, I can't remember if it was this committee or the executive committee, but I promised you that you were going to be sick of reading ordinances by the end of the year. I still aspire to meet that, although the COVID pandemic has changed a lot of the dynamics in the office. I'm working in the office, but our secretary currently is working from home, and the assistant corporation counsel is working from home or over in the child support agency. And so I'm doing a lot more non-lawyer things in the office than I had been, just in order to get the work done, because I'm there alone. I can't drop a stack of files on someone's desk and ask them to do this, or so I'm a little off my pace, but I still am planning to bring in, and you will all see some of these as they come out. Maybe not in this committee, but certainly through county board. I have a records management and retention ordinance. I'm pulling together an ordinance for highways and transportation. I've been working on reconfiguring Chapter 3 to include, to rename it Human Resources and Personnel, or Personnel and Human Resources, and include a lot of the positions that are created by ordinance that aren't codified, such as highway commissioner. There's even an ordinance about the corporation counsel that's probably 20 years old. It could be included in there and updated. So that's on my list. And in addition, the human resources director has given me a long list of changes that she's recommending to the substance of basically personnel code, or that's already in Chapter 3. So that's on there. Coming up more closely for this committee is we still need to finish up the land division ordinance, including, I think we're very, very well along with that. And there are a few components that we need to add in, but I think they'll come quickly. We should be able to have a look at the manure management, or I guess Dan and I will have to sort out what it'll be called. I like agricultural waste management, or nutrient management and performance standards, just because it governs organic matter found in agricultural commercial settings, besides animal waste. Anyway, you should be able to see that at your next meeting. Dan and I have the afternoon on Friday booked for going through that. Dan had some additional content that he's going to get to me. Then he and I are scheduled to meet on Monday for several hours to go through it, similar to how we worked through the land division ordinance, although this is a much smaller piece of work, so I don't anticipate 60 hours being necessary for it. There's a citation ordinance that'll be coming through probably next month. Let's see, I'm trying to think of what else there is. Highways and transit. Those are the ones I think that I've got on my very short list, but I'm getting through it. I just, when I have competing policy priorities, my time gets squished and stretched in order to meet the particular demands of the moment. So I have some big bigger ordinance projects coming up, there I have a proposal for amending Chapter 1. Even it's pretty detailed proposal that I have, and I'm going to let you see it, I guess, maybe in a grand overview, if you can, if you want to hear me talk about it. Sort of like a gardener with flowers, right? This is far more interesting to me than anyway. That stuff will be rolling out. I have during the time that we were focused so intently on the land division ordinance. I did have a few things pile up on my desk, but I think I'm getting through those now. I've had a couple of days away from the land division ordinance, and so I think everything's on track. And I still am, like I said, I aspire to present you with many, I think, very good proposals for inclusion in the county code of ordinances in the upcoming months. And
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, and I can attest to the 60 hours. I know that Tom kept me updated kind of on the progress, and oftentimes there were days when you guys were taking 4 to 6 hours together just to work together on it. Any questions or comments from the committee? Mike.
Comment from Mike. Yeah, I think Nick has probably got a whole lot more on your plate than you've even shared with us right now. I have never doubted, yeah, you're being modest as to what you're doing. I really think that with all the different committees and such that Nick, you have more on your plate than is really possible for a person to do. So I appreciate the work you do to get the ordinances for us. But yeah, you could be 2 or 3 people, I think. So thanks for getting this one here today too.
Thank you.
I think the difficult part, in a way, I'm just watching the land division ordinance come together, is it seems like one thing you do a really good job of, Nick, is as we go through these things, trying to sort of straighten out the logical inconsistencies in all of the ordinances. So having somebody that has a sort of encyclopedic view of how the whole thing fits together is really important. And it's just hard to see how somebody who without not different than you would be able to do that as effectively. I know you're very thorough and much appreciated. Any other questions? We'll just work you to death. Sorry, buddy.
Mr. Chairman, I would be remiss if I didn't echo what the other supervisors have said. Being on this chairman of the CR&T committee and executive, time we do need it, Nick, you're there. So I think we do appreciate it. I guess we want you to know that.
Thank you.
Okay. And maybe someday we can talk about taking the real estate salesman work off your shoulders, but not today. The next item would be the review of the draft land division ordinance. And so this is the first review we've had. As Nick said, it's not, there's still pieces that need to be filled in, but this is a chance for the committee to get a overview of what's in it and ask a few questions. Okay. And I think we'll have Tom Carlson give us a sort of lead us through it. So Tom, why don't you
Okay,
do that for us.
thank you, Mr. Chair. My thought was I'd like to first off just mention that, you know, Nick and I have spent a considerable amount of time on this ordinance. We feel that what you have before you is a much improved document over what we are currently using. We tried to fill in some of the blanks that were left open with the old ordinance. Just in my own personal experience of reviewing maps and having to enforce an ordinance since 2008, roughly, there's a lot of things that come in that I can't do much about. I don't have any teeth, so to speak, because our ordinance either doesn't speak to that issue at hand, or there's a lot of gray areas. So we've tried to get rid of a lot of those gray areas and make them more black and white. Which in turn will be better for everybody. It'll be better for the private surveyors that are complying with the ordinance. It'll be better on my end for having to enforce the document. I want to mention that you know, there's been other people that have worked on this project. It's been a collaborative effort, more or less. We've had input from the highway department, John and Dustin out there, bouncing ideas off of them. The county land information office, Steve Kochaver. He's got Rachel and Sarah that work with him. We've had discussions on overlapping areas, land and water conservation, Dan and his staff, planning and zoning. Real recently, Bob and I sat down with Michelle and Janet, working out some sanitation questions and different elements that we would like to incorporate in the ordinance. Register of Deeds has had some input on this ordinance. And of course, lastly, Corp Counsel. I want to personally thank Nick for all the time he's put into this. I have a lot of time in this, but he has a lot more than I do. So I just want to thank him, like everyone else, for taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to assist with this. It's very much appreciated. And one more comment I would like to make is I think we're very fortunate to have this ordinance drafted in-house by Corp Counsel. I just feel it's a much better project than farming it out to, say, a law firm or something. So that's my personal feeling on that. What I would like to do is just real briefly for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, just talk about how this draft is different than the current Chapter 16, which is on the books. I don't, I guess, intend this to be a discussion, but more or less just a quick summary. Certainly there's going to be a lot of questions I would anticipate, and I would say we want to wait until we get to the appropriate section of the ordinance for any questions. So I'm just going to take off here real quick. Section 16.06, land divisions governed by this chapter. We've added provisions for land contracts in there, retracement CSMs. We've added some exemptions, some of which are currently contained within state statutes, such as wills, leases, and mortgages, sales and exchanges between adjoining landowners. Our current ordinance we're working from doesn't even list some of these items. So we've added assessor's plats, cemetery plats. We've also revised the language for conveyances of equal halves of a 40. Section 1607 is an entirely new section regarding parcel combinations and reconfigurations. 1608, we provided better clarification of the language in this section regarding the classification of land divisions. 1610, this section we currently have in our current ordinance, but we've added some additional language in here, and this definitely will be a section that I anticipate a lot of discussion on by the committee. 16.12, compliance and requirements. We've added provision that no land divisions will be allowed on parcels with delinquent taxes or any outstanding special assessments. We feel this is very important. Section 16.16, dealing with non-liability. This is an entirely new section. 16.21, regarding certified survey maps, we clarified language and added additional requirements that we feel are important. 16.30, in our pre-application consultation with developers, we added high value ag land as a limitation for possible development, something we certainly want to discuss with the developer ahead of time. 16.43, streets and roads. Current ordinance is very I guess, short on this, doesn't have a lot of standards. So we greatly expanded this section to include both public and private streets. We added a new section 16.44, which is access. It requires all lots to have frontage on a public or private street. Currently, our ordinance doesn't say anything about access. So we thought this is very important. Each lot had better have acceptable access. And then our lot section, we greatly expanded that as well. Put a lot of different standards in there. Nick mentioned a few sections we need to address yet. One of them is surface drainage and erosion control, 16.42. We do have some language in there. However, I've been working with Dan Prestabach on this section, trying to pull some standards from other counties. So that's still, that section is still under construction, so to speak. Nick mentioned the conservation or cluster developments. He and I are going to be meeting tomorrow to go over that. Wetland standards, and then of course a fee schedule that hasn't been updated in quite some time. So this, I believe, would be the appropriate time to do that as well. So that's just a real brief overview. And now I guess we'll get into the meat of the ordinance, so to speak. There's a couple ways we could handle this. We could simply take, everybody's had a chance to review this for close to a week. We could take questions and hopscotch around from section to section, or my recommendation with the chair's approval would be to just start at page 1 and work through this. If people have questions, I think it would be better organized if we waited till we got to the appropriate section. So that's my recommendation. I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Let's follow that recommendation, Tom. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I've got the first page up here. It's basic nomenclature. It's just the table of contents. So some of these numbers may change slightly, or we may pick different wording or something for some of these sections, but I mean, it's pretty much all in here. We've got different sub chapters, actually 6 of those right now. So we'll get down into, I guess I don't intend to read this line by line. One thing Corp Counsel did is he put the line numbers on the document. So if somebody does have a question, if you could please refer to the line number, it'll just better direct everybody to where the question is. So I guess I'm just going to start with section number 1601. Anybody have any questions, concerns, comments on that? Okay. And I realize there may be a slight lag, so I'll try and give everybody enough time to comment. I'm going to move on to 1602 then, the authority. Okay. Purpose. We've got actually 11 items underneath here. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the purpose of this ordinance? And again, these purposes are, I guess I look at them as philosophical. These are the things that we're trying to accomplish with this ordinance. And then later on in the ordinance, we speak to these items in greater detail. So like number 6, to prevent and control erosion, we have some things later on in the ordinance that speaks to that. So does anybody have any questions on 16.03 purpose?
Tom?
Yeah.
Yep. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Tom, you kind of mentioned it, number 6. That's the one I was looking at, and I know this is just a general purpose, but it doesn't really say anything about wetlands, just as one of the major items we're looking at. That's just a comment.
And we can
purposes
certainly
don't really say much.
Right. Yeah, we can certainly, I noticed that. I don't see wetlands in here. We can certainly add that in here. Number 7, I don't know if it would be covered there, but environmentally sensitive areas, prevent destruction or impairment. But it may be a good idea to specifically mention wetlands. So yes, point noted, Mike.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Wetlands are on line 7, number 7. They're listed there. But
okay.
I guess my comments were on line 23, number 8. When I look in here, I don't see a definition of prime farm agricultural land. So when I talked to you about this, Tom, I went back to the environmentally sensitive areas definitions. And there is a county definition there, and then there's the state definition. So I think we need to somewhere define, and then kind of blend that in with the high valued ag land and go one way or the other with it. But here it's
Thank you, Dan.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. That's exactly the question I was going to say, because when you say prime agricultural land, that needs to be defined more than just, because you and I know what we think it is. I'm not sure everybody else does. Thanks to that question or comment.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I know that these are just general statements of purpose, but I'm wondering if it might be appropriate to specifically mention enhancement, preservation, water quality improvement in the Red Cedar watershed. I don't know. It struck me as being something that was missing.
Any thoughts? Much of the county is not in the watershed, of course, but
right.
No. That could be added to as a additional note in one of the sections, it seems like. Maybe as a point of emphasis or something.
Yeah, that I think that would be appropriate. I don't want to burden the developers with, unnecessary things. It just struck me as something that maybe should be here as part of our purpose.
Okay. Can we make note of that and move on?
Yes, note has been made. Okay, definition section. This is quite lengthy. We've spent a lot of time on this, believe me. There certainly are going to be additions to this as we go through. Prime ag land being one of those. Does anybody have any questions on these definitions specifically? To go through each one is going to take some time. So if there's any of these that are causing some confusion, or somebody has some possible suggestions, or something we don't have in here that you feel is very important to be defined, now is the time to let us know.
Tom?
Yes.
I know on the conservation subdivision, when we get to the back of the ordinance, you'll see my name is on there. I do think we need to change this definition a little bit that we have here to include making sure that if we have conservation subdivisions included, that a percentage of the developable land is permanently protected or something to that effect, and not just wetlands or the playground area or something that's undevelopable. I want to expand that definition a little bit for sure.
Okay.
But the actual conservation subdivision language is something that I really don't have yet, and I'm not sure how we're going to arrive at that. But
okay.
Good point.
Any other comments from anyone? And we may be coming back to these as we get into the ordinance. Certainly we, in our discussion, we may be back in this section of the ordinance. But for now, any other comments? Okay, I am going to move on. Geographic jurisdiction. So the provisions of this ordinance, of course, apply to all land and water within Dunn County, except within any incorporated city or village. So City of Menominee, this ordinance doesn't apply. Village of Elk Mound, and it's important to note that any other town ordinance that's more restrictive, town or municipal ordinance that's more restrictive, they are going to be responsible. We don't enforce their ordinances. So the subdivider would have to certainly comply with the more restrictive ordinance requirements. Any questions on this section? Hearing none, I'll move on to 1606, land divisions governed by this chapter. I know I had mentioned I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I think some of these sections we need to slow down and actually go through line by line. So without objection, this is one of those sections I think we should probably take line by line. Land divisions governed by this chapter. So this ordinance is going to apply to all divisions of land where the active division creates one or more new lots smaller than 20 acres. And that is consistent with our current ordinance. You carve out a 24-acre parcel, it's exempt right now, and it will be exempt based on the language in our draft. Item B here, any remnant portion of a contiguous tract of less than 20 acres, and I will get to contiguous tract here very soon. Any remnant portion of a contiguous tract of less than 20 acres resulting from a land division. So basically, the parcel you're carving out, if it's under 20, your newly created parcel, it's going to require compliance with the ordinance. Once you leave the remnant in your ownership that's under 20, that piece also requires compliance with the ordinance. And I think now would be a good time to go back up to the definition section, which we were just in, and make sure everybody's on board or understands the contiguous tract. Okay, and this verbiage we have is in very good alignment with the state's definition. So contiguous tract, I'll read it. All of a contiguous area of land in which title is held under identical ownership. Contiguous parcels under identical ownership. So this means my wife and I own a piece of land and we own several parcels and it's all in our name. I can't own a piece with my wife and a piece with my brother as joint tenants or tenants in common. That is not considered identical. So contiguous parcels are under identical ownership. Under identical ownership are considered to be one parcel for the purpose of this definition, even though separate parcels may have separate tax ID numbers or were acquired at different times or from different persons. Contiguous parcels shall be treated as a single parcel or tract for the purposes of this ordinance unless they are bisected by an existing public highway, railroad, or meandered body of water. An unmeandered or intermittent stream, creek, or drainage ditch does not bisect a contiguous tract. Lots or outlots within recorded plats, assessor's plats, or certified survey maps held under identical ownership shall be part of and included within the contiguous tract. Any questions on that definition? I know there's a lot there, but it's important that we be very clear on defining this contiguous tract. These contiguous tracts could range in size from a few acres to several hundred acres, okay? Any questions on that? So we're back down into 1606. Go ahead.
I just make one comment. The comprehensive zoning ordinance, because of livestock sighting, has contiguous defined in one sentence called parcels of land sharing a common boundary. Parcels that meet at only a single point are not considered contiguous. And that's a big thing in determining if two farms are separate in livestock sighting. So there's different meanings for contiguous based on different intentions, I guess. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Dan. And in our definitions, we actually define contiguous, and we made it very clear that the meeting at one point does not maintain contiguity. So,
okay.
Yep. Very good point. So again, we're talking about provisions. This ordinance is going to apply to different things. Item C is talking about land contracts. Right now, our current ordinance is silent on that. I hope everybody knows what a land contract is, but so anybody enters into a land contract and records that for a parcel less than 20 acres, it's going to have to comply with this ordinance. All retracement certified survey maps. So that's, let's just say Mike Kinnear owns a 5-acre parcel that's never been surveyed. It's a meets and bounds description. He just wants to have a certified survey map done on it. He's not creating a new parcel. He's not dividing his existing parcel. He's just better clarifying it. That would be considered a retracement certified survey map. Those types of maps will be governed by this ordinance. Now we get into exemptions, okay? A lot of these are driven by chapter 236.45. So the first one is creation of less than 5 parcels by transfers of interest in land by will or pursuant to court order. Those are exempt. We can't do anything. We can't impose our ordinance requirements on item A or any of these following for that matter. Leases for a term not to exceed 10 years, mortgages or easements creating less than 5 parcels. Sale or exchange of land between adjoiners of adjoining property. If additional lots are not thereby created and the lots resulting are not reduced below the minimum sizes required by this chapter or other applicable laws or ordinances, subject to the following requirements. This is a section that Nick and I worked very closely with the Land Information Office. We've also pulled some language, I believe it was from Barron County, does something very similar to this. So again, these are conveyances between adjoiners. We can't regulate them, but we can review them and we can charge a fee for that review. So a draft of the recordable document is going to have to be submitted to the county. We're going to have an application and a review fee. For our review, county review prior to recording. The grantor and grantee identified in the document has to be identical to the ownership of the adjoining parcels, and the document has to clearly state that the parcel to which the exchange area is to be attached, and we're going to require the following statement be put on the conveyance. So that'll all be reviewed by the county prior to recording. We want to make sure there are no delinquent taxes or outstanding special assessments on either of the adjoining parcels, which is very important. The adjoining parcels have to be in the same taxing jurisdiction, and of course the 2 parcels have to be within the same zoning district. Any questions on these sales or conveyances between adjoiners? We cannot require a certified survey map on these under state law. Item D, assessor's plats. These are regulated by state statute 70.27. Creation or transfers of parcels of 20 acres or greater in size that can be described as an equal half of an entire government protracted quarter section or government lot as defined in the original public land survey system that does not front on a meandered body of water, none of which may be bisected by a public highway. So there's a lot of things here, but in a nutshell, if you own a aliquot 40, a 40 acre parcel that was created by the PLSS system, we're going to allow you to convey equal rectangular halves of that, north half, south half, east half, west half, and that provision is currently in the ordinance we're working from today. That's current. So cemetery plats are exempt, and divisions of land relating to the acquisition or exchange of land by public agencies. So any questions on where this ordinance is going to apply and where it's going to be exempt?
And Tom, could you just freeze it there? I want to talk about E again. One of the loopholes, I guess, that we tried to close here is where it's not possible to actually have a rectangular half. We don't. So a lot of times you may have a government lot on one side. It's a straight line running north-south, and on the other side, it meanders along the edge of a river. So it's for sort of legal purposes, it's like a quarter. And we have, over the years, there have been conveyances that say, the western half of this lot. Well, you can't, unless you get out there with a mathematician well-versed in calculus and a lot of other stuff, you simply can't, there's no way to find the western half or the eastern half of something like this. And so that's why those have been sort of disqualified from exemption.
Correct. That's. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we have a 40, somebody will come in, well, I own the northeast of section such and such, but there's a public highway that runs through there. And let's just, it's fee title for that matter. Or it doesn't even have to be fee title. We're not going to allow this when that tract is bisected by a public highway. So just better clarified the language in here to help address some of these questions that no doubt will come up in the future. So any questions on 1606? Okay, moving on, 1607. This is a new section. I get asked from time to time, because our ordinance is called a subdivision ordinance, and surveyors come in and they want to combine parcels or reconfigure parcels. They're not creating any new parcels, and in some instances they're actually reducing the number of parcels if they're doing a combination. Mr. County Surveyor, this is what I'm doing here going to require compliance with your ordinance? And our ordinance right now is somewhat silent on that. So we thought it's really necessary to have this section in here. I'm not going to get into all the nuts and bolts of it. Everybody has certainly had a chance to read this, but we are going to review parcel combinations and reconfigurations. And a distinction I want to make is especially the reconfiguration part. We just got done talking about conveyances between adjoiners, which some would argue is reconfiguring parcels. This section, 1607, is different and stands alone from the conveyances between adjoiners. Conveyances between adjoiners are exempt from our ordinance, but reconfiguration. So I own 3 lots in a platted subdivision that are all adjoining, and I simply want to change the common lines between 2 of those lots. I own both of them. I want one to be a little larger, one to be a little smaller. I'm not dealing with an adjoining landowner. It's myself. I just want to reconfigure those. That's where this section would apply. So we are going to review those. They are subject. The last sentence under parent 1 says that they will be subject to review by the department. So any questions on 1607? Hearing none, I will move on. 1608, classification of land divisions. This section, I don't know that we really need to get into in great detail. We've got basically 3 classifications. We have a minor land or minor subdivision, which in other words is a certified survey map. You can do up to 4 parcels. Actually, number 1, I guess, does warrant a little more explanation. So I'll read it. Creation of a lot smaller than 20 acres from a contiguous tract, which we all know what that is now, shall require a certified survey map. A maximum of 4 lots smaller than 20 acres from each quarter or government lot within that tract may be created within a 5-year period. So this is consistent language with our current ordinance. So what this says, if it's maybe not quite understandable, my contiguous tract, for some simplicity's sake, let's say I own 2 40s. I have 80 acres in one contiguous tract, so 2 quarters. What this is saying is I can do 4 lots, a maximum of 4 lots in each one of those quarters, right? Within a 5-year period. So if I came in, I could do 8 lots on that 80 acres right now. With 2 certified survey maps. I can only do 4 lots on each map, but I could do 4 lots on each 40 in the next 5-year period. If I'm dead set on making 10 lots out there, I can do it. I would be restricted by time. I could do 8 right now, but then I would have to wait 5 years to record the second 2. A point I want to make is this requirement is different than the zoning ordinance, especially when we're in the general agriculture districts, which are density based, the 8-to-1 density ratio. And this, Bob and I commonly deal with landowners and surveyors because they may be in compliance or meet requirements of one ordinance, but not the other. So anyway, again, this provision in here allows people to do up to 4 splits per 40 in a 5-year period, which is consistent with how we've been reviewing maps for a long time. So one thing we do have some slight issue with when a landowner comes in, they own 2 different 40s, right? And they want to carve a parcel out, but that parcel is going to be located in each one. It's straddling, let's say, the common 40 line. What 40 is it going to count against? So we put a provision in here. we tried to make it just very intuitive. The lot will count against the quarter or government lot in which the greater area of the created lot lies. So if 70% of the lot lies in the 140, that's the 40 it's going to count against. It won't count in both. Any questions on section 1? Minor subdivisions.
Just a comment, Tom, if I could.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Tom makes a good point there. You know, in the survey ordinance and the zoning ordinance, and it's very similar or parallels to the county survey ordinance and town survey ordinances, land division ordinances. And so the fact that, you know, that we have a density ratio doesn't mean that they only meet the survey. We work with this all the time, so they still have to meet our zoning ordinance and those requirements. And so it's not that they're inconsistent; they're just two different documents. But the landowner does have to comply with both of those documents. So thanks for bringing that up, Tom, because we work on that quite a bit, just about every time we divide land, because most of the land in Dunn County is in general ag. So
right, and the point I want to make is it's not complicated. It just, you need to really sit down and analyze every public request on its own merits, because they're all slightly different. So, and I feel the process we have in place right now is working very well, and the surveyors know that they have to check with us as well, and they've been doing that. So, any other questions, comments on section 1 or paragraph 1 here? We'll move on with county plat. I'm not going to get into this in great detail, other than if you want to do more than 4 lots in each one of those quarters, and you don't want to wait your 5 years, then you have the option of doing a county plat. One thing that is noteworthy here, that the land may or may not require a rezone depending on what it's currently zoned. So you want to put a whole bunch of lots on a 40, let's say you want to do 15 lots on a 40, but it's own general ag, you can't do that without a rezone. So, and this committee has been involved in rezones over the years. Everybody I'm sure is aware of that. So county plat is a provision here, and we've had, you know, many of those done in the county. I've actually been in contact with a surveyor that's looking at possibly doing 1 or 2 yet before the end of this year. So county plat is a way that we can divide land, and the state plat is another way that we can divide land. So county plats, the distinction between a county and a state plat is all the reviews on a county plat happen here at the local level, whereas a state plat also requires state review. Any questions on the classification of land divisions? Okay, suitability standards. This is a section that may or may not need more work. It's one of those sections that has a, I would argue, a great degree of subjectivity to it. We'll just, I guess, entertain any questions at this point. Everybody's had a chance to read this. Any questions on the suitability standards? Something that's not in here maybe that we should consider adding, or something in here that doesn't maybe make the most sense, or maybe needs further clarification from anyone?
I have a question, Tom.
Go ahead, Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you. Now, we looked at suitability standards with the old one when we were looking at the development east of Menominee there. And basically, we were told they were too vague to use for anything. Are these here, and then are they fleshed out later on? Because if I felt something was unsuitable and I gave a couple of reasons, this doesn't say what my reasons can be. So I'm just kind of wondering how this works compared to the old one, which looks really similar.
Right, and maybe Nick wants to chime in on this. I'll attempt it. My understanding, and maybe my understanding isn't 100% correct, but my understanding is that these suitability standards speak to the intent of this ordinance and what we're trying to accomplish, but then we need to actually have some standards further on in the ordinance that deal with unsuitable soil or inadequate drainage, and talk about, let's just use flooding, for example. So somewhere in the ordinance later on, we should really talk about flooding and put some standards that, if any part of a land division is encumbered or embraces any part of a floodplain, that area should not be used in the calculation, let's say, of the contiguous buildable area, which we'll get into. We do have a provision for that. Severe erosion potential. So let's just say, we want to address that here. That's a suitability standard. Somewhere later on in the ordinance, we should, and actually we do, speak to that. No slopes over a certain percent shall be included in the buildable area. So I guess that's how my take is on this, that these suitability standards need more emphasis later on, or some type of standards that we can actually measure and point to and say, hey, you're not meeting these standards, therefore we have a right to deny this land division. I guess that's my thought on it. I would say these standards, I agree, Mike, are very similar to the current ordinance, but I would argue we have more provisions in this draft that we're lacking in our current ordinance. And I don't know if Corp Counsel has anything to add to that.
I think they make a good springboard for more detailed regulation, but in specific circumstances, and without getting into the detail of how the case for unsuitability might be met, it isn't, strictly speaking, necessary to have every conceivable standard specified in an ordinance. The more, so we think about defending a decision by the committee before a court, before a judge, as the kind of the standard for, will your decision hold up? The more detailed and articulate findings are, the more likely they're to be upheld as a reasonable exercise of discretion or authority. And the more vague, less detailed they are, the more likely they're to be found to be, arbitrary. These standards, these suitability standards, give a springboard and an opportunity, if the case is right, to try to bring in these concepts, even though there may not be a specific standard set in the ordinance. I mean, so it's just not possible to consider every conceivable possibility that might come into play in deciding whether a certain area is suitable for residential development. And so I agree with everything that Tom Carlson said, but I also think it's possible for the county to utilize this as a way to try, if circumstances that aren't anticipated or that are, say, statistically unlikely to occur, but still can, and then someday they do. It provides a mechanism for scrutinizing an application in light of the circumstances that may present at a particular time. So it's a springboard for further specific or detailed regulation, but it also provides I guess a kind of a safety net, if you will. It may not be possible to determine unsuitability without additional help outside, engineers or consultants, people who are, better versed in conservation issues or, drainage issues, DNR staff, so forth. But that's a decision that, that can be made contemporaneously with consideration of something that comes up in the context of a request for approval of a map or a plat that just hasn't been contemplated before.
Thank you, both of you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments on suitability standards? Division of plat, or division by plat of high, let me start over. Division of plat of land with high agricultural value. This section I'm going to read. So number one, it is declared to be the policy of Dunn County to make a conscious effort to preserve the agricultural use of land, which because of soil characteristics, aggregate acreage, proximity to other farms, or other pertinent characteristics have high value for continued farm uses to meet the food and fiber needs of the county, the region, the state, and nation. In the interest of furthering the orderly use of land, preserving the character of these portions of the county, encouraging the use of land most appropriate to the essential nature of the land itself, land divisions by plat shall be discouraged from intruding on areas of high agricultural value. Paragraph 2, the committee in determining the agricultural value may seek the advice of the County Land and Water Conservationists, U.S. Department of Ag, Natural Resource and Conservation Service, assessors, affected town or municipality, and any other county or state agency which would be of assistance in making such a determination. Corp Counsel and I wouldn't say we struggled with this section, but the point I brought up with Nick at the time was, right now we have a similar standard in our existing ordinance, and that standard historically has not been applied to the minor land divisions. In other words, a certified survey map. Somebody comes in, I'm sure there's, of the 4 or 5 that are on my desk right now, I would argue that 1 or 2 of those is probably dividing ag land or includes ag land. Now, is that land high value? I don't know. The point I'm trying to make is the minor land divisions, we have not been applying this standard to. It does come up, of course, on the major land divisions. And so I guess the committee we're kind of at a fork in the road here. Well, first of all, I guess we need to decide, is this an important provision to have in the ordinance? Is the committee comfortable or feels that this is an important provision? And then if we can answer yes to that, I guess if the answer is no, we move on. If the answer is yes to that, then we have to, in my mind, make a decision. We're at a fork in the road. Do we want this to apply to all land divisions, majors and minors, or only have it apply to the major land divisions? Nick and I put this in here. We titled or designed the title as such to make it indicative that this only applies to plats. I guess right now this is open for discussion. I'll give you the rationale behind why we feel this should apply, or our recommendation is that this should apply only to plats. And keep in mind, others may have other opinions. This is my opinion. We're dealing with a plat. It's typically a larger land division. We'll take Timber Valley, 54 lot subdivision. It's condensed, it's in one spot. And let's just say that was all on high value ag land. We're pulling away a nice piece of land in one spot with 54 lots versus these certified survey maps. They're done all around the county. We have a lot up in New Haven, a lot in Rock Creek, maybe one in the town of Weston. So even though we are potentially taking up some ag land, they are scattered around the county. They're not all in one spot. Another point I want to make is some of our townships, our local municipalities have, of course, their own land division ordinances. Some of them have minimum lot size. So we'll just take a certain township, say they have a 5 acre minimum lot size. I believe it's Hay River. So I'm going to carve a piece of land out up in Hay River, and there's 3 acres of woods. I really want to build a house on that 3 acre piece, but in order to comply with the town's ordinance, I need to make a 5 acre parcel, which now is going to force me to go out into a soybean field. Is the county going to deny that land division if 30-40% of that lot now is taking up some high, or what we consider to be high value ag land? It could put potential landowners in a bind where they can't divide their property because they are infringing on high value ag land. So just some things, I guess, that, you know, bear their own merits and need some consideration. And I suspect we're going to have some discussion on this section. So that's all I have right now. The way this is worded, it would only apply to major land divisions. Does anybody else have comments on this section, or strong feelings or opinions?
Before, I just want to interject. This is written as an aspirational standard also. The county declares its policy, and what is its policy? To make a conscious effort to preserve. Land divisions by plat are discouraged from intruding on high agricultural value land. So it doesn't create a prohibition. It creates a standard for evaluating a specific request in light of the circumstances that are presented within that request. So I just wanted to point that out.
Any other thoughts at this point? I think it's appropriate to have it in here the way you have it in there.
I think, this is Dan, I think we should go back and look at our comprehensive land use plan, and we've told the state which land we want to preserve for agriculture. We've got it all mapped out there. And link these two things together some way.
I agree with Dan. I think in our comp plan there is the farmland preservation plan, which we've already identified at least a method of identifying lands that are eligible for farmland preservation credits. It would seem that as a minimum that we would coordinate with the farmland preservation plan, which is part of the comp plan.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing from Dan and Bob, because, you know, Nick and I need some direction on this. We need to know how to proceed. So from what I'm hearing from you two gentlemen is, are you still okay with this applying to major land divisions with a cross-reference to the farmland preservation plan, or are you talking all land divisions?
So I think it's important to realize that 90+% of the land that is divided in the county on an annual basis is one lot at a time. Rarely, you know, we haven't had a major subdivision except for the one in many, many years. If you total up the number of acres in that one subdivision and compare that to the number of acres countywide that were created by a single land division or CSM, clearly we're missing. I believe we're missing the boat by not at least trying to look at the CSM in terms of it, because cumulatively it's way out of whack with the major. And yeah, it's all over the county, but an acre taken out of Sand Creek is the same as an acre taken out of a major subdivision. It's still 1 acre less of important farmland. But regardless of whether it's a plat or a CSM, I think that it's important to connect or cross-reference or at least recognize the comp plan or the farmland preservation plan in terms of what those documents define as, you know, maybe high agricultural value. So
This section, I guess the concern I have over this section is having very good standards in place, so it is not subjective. Subjectivity, I know, has its place in time, but it makes it very difficult. When I put yourself in my shoes, I've got a gentleman, him and his wife come in and they want to divide some property. And I tell them, well, you know, it may or may not be able to be divided. We're going to have to make a determination here at the county on whether or not we're going to allow this. Well, when are you going to have your determination made? Well, I don't know. We have to consult, you know, a few other professionals. We have to make a decision on this, and versus going to a document or a map and saying, hey, your land is colored blue, therefore you shall not do this. I think if we're going to go ahead with this, if we can remove as much subjectivity from it as possible, I see a huge benefit in that. Although I don't know that we can do that. I mean, I'm just bringing up my concerns with this. I've talked with private surveyors on this, let them know that this likely will be in the ordinance, and you know, get their opinions on it, because they are the professionals working with the, you know, not only the developers, but also the constituents, county constituents, who are taxpayers that want to divide their property. So I just think if we move forward with this, we have to have a logical procedure in place. It's just my opinion that it's again, remove as much subjectivity from the decision as possible. People want to know. And I guess if I own, let's say I own 80 acres in the town of Red Cedar, for instance, I want to know, am I going to be able to divide this land in the future or not? Or what my options are ahead of time. So I don't know. I guess at this point, we're looking for direction from the committee on how the committee sets policy for the county, and we're looking for what you want the county policy to be on this, given all the input staff have provided.
Any thoughts from the committee?
And not that a decision needs to be made today.
Yeah, I
you
was
know,
gonna
obviously
say-
this is a draft, and we certainly are going to be coming back with other items. So
I'd like to flag this because this is an important topic, and I don't think we have sort of talked it through and completely understand all of the implications of it. But I'm glad it's being raised this way at this point in time. But let's flag it. Let's come back to it as needed and
okay.
try and address it.
Limitations. So 1611, this is identical to what we have in our current ordinance, except for one minor tweak we made. You may remember on Timber Valley, we had to we needed correspondence, I guess, from the city stating whether or not their sanitary sewer system would be extended out to this development within 5 years from the date of project completion. And we were stumbling over that phrase, project completion. What does project completion mean? When the roads on the development are paved, when the last lot is sold, when the last building is put up in the development? So we decided, if you look under paragraph 2 here, the end of the first sentence, the first sentence actually, developments in areas where sanitary sewage treatment can reasonably be expected to be available within 5 years of the date of the recording of the plat. That's a drop certain date. The plat gets recorded on January 10th of 2015. We know that the drop dead date for this requirement is January 10th of 2020. So it's funny how changing one word in a sentence can totally change the whole meaning and interpretation of a requirement. So we feel this certainly needed to be done better define when the 5-year period ends or begins in this case. So that's the only change we made here. It's identical, I believe, in all other respects to what we currently have. Any questions? 16.11.
Tom,
Yes.
where did the 5 years come from? Was that just a date that was picked, or is that?
I don't know. I don't know if that's from some adopted or best management practice standard. I don't know. I don't want to say we picked it just because it sounded good, but in all honesty, I copied the verbiage from our current ordinance. I guess that time limit or time amount is open for discussion by the committee. I can't tell you why it was picked. As you know, it certainly wasn't based on any science or research I've done. It was simply brought over from the current ordinance.
Statute.
Yeah, I can't tell you if statute regulates that.
Okay.
I don't believe
I
there's
just
a,
wondered.
well, I shouldn't say, but I don't believe this is driven by statute. I think it's just more or less maybe a best management practice. I don't know. Can't say for sure. But I guess what we're trying to accomplish here, of course, is that, you know, if we know 2 years from now that the city was going to be expanding sanitary sewer service out to Timber Valley, then, you know, these requirements would have had to been met. So they would have had to install all the necessary infrastructure here. So
I just keep wondering as a society how long we're going to allow people to say they can't afford to hook up to a sewer system that's a quarter mile away.
mm-hmm. Any thoughts, comments?
Question of Dan. So Dan, do you think it should be longer?
Well, I just think at a certain point, we've got to put that price on each lot and say, you know, you need to, I'm not sure if that's the answer to make it longer, Mike. I think that at some time we got to say, let's get this sewage to the sewage treatment plant rather than individual septic systems that, you know, we have pretty good idea, or, you know, that may be going right down into their well and into the groundwater. I'm not sure. I don't have a good way to address that, but we always hear that it costs too much to do that. And then we, on the other end, we have that provision where they can create 4 lots in a 5-year period and get around the subdivision. We're kind of, I don't know, I don't have a good answer, Mike, but those are the thoughts that I have, considerations.
I don't, Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes.
I'm not smart enough to have any ideas about how to frame this, but I agree with Dan. I mean, if there were a way somehow to say if there is a possibility that this could be connected to municipal sewer or community waste treatment, you need to do it. I just am not smart enough to know how.
And I guess maybe a point to bring up too that I'm just thinking out loud is, where do we draw that line where, well, you're close enough, a quarter mile, you need to do this, but
Yeah.
you know, now you're a half a mile, you know, should you have to do it when you're a half mile or 3/4 of a mile? Just a thought that came to my mind. If we're going to dig into this further, I think we need to have, you know, some measurable standards.
And Tom, remind me, what was the Timber Valley distance? Is it less than a mile? It is, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I think it was a quarter mile, I believe. It was on this, I believe the city line came out to Lookout Road, which was a quarter mile west of this development.
Yeah.
I mean, don't quote me on that, but it was closer than a mile, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you may remember Mr. Winsand did come in, I believe, or his engineer, and they had a cost estimate, because I believe the committee asked for that, if I remember. They did have a cost estimate, I think one for a community sewer system perhaps, and then another cost estimate to connect up to the city. And yeah, it is a lot of money for a developer, but You know, you have to put, how can you put a price on protecting public health too? It's a seesaw. It's a balancing act. Mm-hmm.
Mike here again. Yeah, I remember getting that, but of course, whenever we have a developer do a cost estimate, they do the cost estimate on 1.5, 2.5, 3 acre lots. And of course, it's going to be cost prohibitive. Probably a ½ acre is the maximum size you can get with lots if you want to sewer them and make it reasonable. So when you're saying you've got to have sewer, you're probably also saying that you've got to have a conservation subdivision of some kind, unless they want to put the money out.
This is Bob, if I could. I don't disagree, Mike, except that if we're going to go that direction, we need to amend our zoning ordinance, because across the board, the minimum lot size is 1 acre, except in shoreland where the state has some different standards. But otherwise, our ordinance says 1 acre.
And Mike again, and Bob, yeah, I understand that. And of course, it'd be quite easy to change the ordinance and say, for example, if it's a conservation subdivision, then et cetera, et cetera. But these are just things to think about. I know Diane brought that up, and just something to think about.
Put a flag on it, Tom. Let's.
I was just going to say, it seems to me that this one needs a flag for further consideration. Okay. Any other comments, questions? If not, we'll move on. Hearing none. 16.12, compliance and requirements. This is pretty standard verbiage here. Does anybody see anything that stands out that they would like further clarification on? In item 2 here, I just want to drive this point home again. No land division shall be approved if any part of the contiguous tract has unpaid taxes or outstanding special assessments. Just for full disclosure, we are considering taking the word unpaid out and putting delinquent in there. It's already been done. So it just, unpaid leaves it open to unintended consequences. If I'm paying in installments and my second installment isn't paid, but I fully intend to do it, this would prohibit me from dividing land, and that's not what we're intending. The intention is to have or delinquent taxes. So I just want to make that distinction or clarification. Any questions on 16.12? Okay, moving on. 16.13, I think, is standard verbiage. Any questions on 16.13? 1614, I think, is in the same boat. And for that matter, 16.15 and 16.16. Any questions on these sections? Non-liability, I guess, should make a point on that. We don't currently, I don't believe we have a similar section in our current ordinance, so this is being added. We may have similar verbiage in our ordinance, but we don't have a non-liability section per se. We will now. Okay, that got us through the first subchapter. Moving down into subchapter 2, certified survey maps. So we have a pre-application consultation. Pretty standard here. I would say we do this maybe on a very, informal basis. Right now it's typically done over the phone. We don't actually meet with people at a table and go over projects, although sometimes we do, but a pre-application consultation. Then we get into 16.21. just basic housekeeping here about submitting the required documents and then where the copies end up going. Number 4, we've added some things in here. We have standards in our current ordinance, but there are some things that, like right now, surveyors aren't required to show existing driveways. I ask them to do that, but if they don't want to, I can't say thou shalt. Under item D here, we're asking for driveways. So there's a lot of different things here under paragraph 4. All things that we feel are very important. The slopes and wetlands. I just want to make a point here that we are still discussing these areas. The 25% is not set in stone. And in fact, we likely will be changing that to something different. Not sure what that's going to be, but Dan and I are working on that. Wetlands, I guess we have to be very careful. I put this in here, but you know, a surveyor fairly inexpensively can show the approximate wetland area on a property. If we're going to require, though, a complete official delineation, I mean, we could be talking hundreds, if not, you know, $1,000 or more. So we have to really fine tune how we want these wetlands shown on a map. Are they going to be approximate or actually done by a wetland delineator? Regional floodplain boundaries, shoreland zoning notes, easements, signature block for the county, recording information. This is new. Item T, if any easement is being defined or granted on a certified survey map, a mortgagee certificate must be included on the map if the parcel has an open mortgage. So it's just something that's very good practice and policy that we didn't have in an ordinance. So that's something new. Number 5 is something new. We run across these periodically. Let's just say Nick and I own adjoining properties. I own 40 acres, he owns 40 next to me, and we've agreed to sell Tom Quinn a 5-acre parcel that's going to come out of both of our pieces, 2.5 acres out of my 40 and 2.5 out of Nick's. And if we agree verbally with the surveyor to carve that piece out, the surveyor does it, records the map, that creates a legal tax parcel, okay? And the county is obligated to, by statute, to create a tax parcel, give it a new PIN number, and generate a tax bill. The problem is we have co-owners of that 5 acres, if everybody can conceptualize that. And let's just say Nick and I and Tom all of a sudden have a disagreement, and I'm willing to sign a deed over to to Tom Quinn for the 5 acres, but Nick locks his heels in and said, no, I changed my mind, I'm not doing it. There is no title conveyance. So we have a legally created tax parcel that the county is obligated to send a tax bill on and properly list that parcel, but Tom Quinn never took title to it. So now Nick owns half of it and I own half of it. And we have some of these in the county. If you want to know about all the problems it creates, you can speak with the Land Information Office. It's not a good situation. So we put item 5 in here to kind of, you know, it's certainly not, it can't eliminate the situation or the problem or prevent it from ever happening. But what this provision 5 says is Nick and I there would have to be an owner certificate on that certified survey map that he and I would both sign. It would basically say that he and I are consenting to the surveying, dividing, and mapping of the property shown on this map. Again, it wouldn't prevent a situation from happening, but we have landowners come into the county and say, well, you know, the map's recorded, the surveyor did this, I never consented to it. If we could point them to the recorded document that had their signature on it saying, well, right here, you signed on such and such a day that you were okay with this. So it hopefully will, you know, these landowners know that they're signing something ahead of time that, you know, if they have any doubts or reservations, they probably shouldn't be signing this document. So we just feel 5 is something that would have great benefit. Again, it's not going to prevent problems, but it might help reduce problems. Item 6, item 7. So if we decide that we need additional information as part of our review, we have the right to ask for these items, this whole list, but not limited to the list. So just a lot of standard things. Item 7, the CSMs have to be recorded. Any certified survey maps that are dedicating road right away to the county, they are going to be referred out to the highway committee. We had one here a few years ago that I actually took before that committee. And then we put item 9 in here. We have some maps periodically that for whatever reason they get suspended or the landowner changed their mind. And then 2 years later, they come back and say, well, now we want to go through with this. And we don't have a way to address that. So item 9 addresses that when the review process has been suspended without any action, so no approval or no disapproval, that the project is dead. I mean, it's going to expire within 12 months from the date it was submitted. So any question about this whole section, which is all basically technical requirements for certified survey maps? There's a lot in here, but it's all necessary in our opinion, and will make my job much easier.
Okay, this is Mike again. I'm sorry, I had to miss a little bit. I've got another meeting that I'm supposed to be at too, but maybe you covered it. I apologize. 25% or greater slopes. 25% seems awfully high. I'm wondering where that came from.
Yeah, you missed that, Mike. That section, thank you for bringing that up. I've been working with Dan on that. There are some other standards, 12%, 16%, 20%. It likely is going to be less than that. This verbiage, I'll be honest, came from another county. We put it in here, and yes, Dan and I are working on that, and in all likelihood, it will be a figure that is less than 25%, correct?
Thank you. Sorry for missing out the first time.
Understandable. Any other questions on 16.21? Hearing none. Moving on to 16.22, retracement certified survey maps. I touched on this a little bit up in one of the earlier sections. I believe it was dealing with land divisions governed by this ordinance. So again, these are Supervisor Kinnear has a small parcel that's never been surveyed. He just wants a certified survey map done on it. And we do get these from time to time. I don't know how many a year, half dozen, maybe up to a dozen. But they are, I wouldn't say they're common, but they do come in. And the question always comes up, is the county going to review these? I'm not dividing land, I'm just retracing an existing parcel. And we just feel for the benefit of the county land records and that we should be reviewing these. So we've added this in here, a whole section on retracement certified survey maps. There has to be a statement shown on the map that it's not a division of property, but solely a retracement, and depiction of land boundaries and the recording information where that base document is, different requirements that they have to comply with. So just a real standard language here. Any questions?
Tom?
Yes, Dan.
And this line 469, it says this cannot be used to correct a land division violation. Are land division violations addressed somewhere else? And I probably should know this,
we have an enforcement section. We have compliance. We'll be getting to that later.
All right.
Yeah. So what this is saying is, I deed a piece of land to Supervisor Morehouse, and it would have really required a certified survey map. She can't come back later and say, well, I'm doing a retracement CSM on this now. It's a violation. You can't correct that by arguing, well, no, I'm just going to retrace it. So, okay. Any other questions? Moving on. Subchapter 3, plats. So we have a pre-application consultation again. I'll direct you to line 481 here. we've added this statement in here, or proposed division of high value ag land. I think it's important at the pre-application consultation, if we have the high value or prime ag land section in here, a provision that we need to bring that up at that application meeting, to make it very clear that, hey, this project has a very low likelihood of surviving if you go through with it. So, so it's just standard language again here, different things they have to submit. Any questions on the pre-application consultation? I would say the pre-app consultation on a major land division is much more in depth, certainly, than it would be on a certified survey map. So, and these are typically more of a formal meeting where we actually sit down with the subdivider. There's a lot more things to talk about and get ironed out. Okay, then we're moving down into 16.31, application and review of county and state plats. Before I go any further, I just want to make a small announcement that this room, the training room that Supervisor Quinn, myself, and Corp Counsel are in, is booked at 11:30, and somebody likely will be coming in here prior to 11:30 to get set up. So I would say we have maybe a half hour, 40 minutes at most. Just want to give that shout out. So about a half hour from now, we'll have to start wrapping this up. 16.31, application and review, county and state plats. So standard requirements, number of copies that have to come in, and then how those copies get distributed. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here unless there are specific questions. We have 90 days. The committee has 90 days to make a decision. And again, we've been through this with other plats. You either have to approve, conditionally approve, or reject the plat unless you extend the time with the subdivider. Number 4, we will not approve any preliminary plat that's a subject of an unsatisfied objection from an objecting agency. So that would be like the Department of Transportation if we're on a state highway, state DOT, or Department of Administration plat review in Madison. Number 5, committee is not going to be taking any action unless there's been a complete submittal, including town board input, at least 15 days prior to the required committee meeting date. So then once the preliminary has gone through, assuming it's been approved, then we move into the final phase, right? So the subdivider has to submit these copies. The department is going to transmit all these copies to the same entities up in section 1A through G. Then on the final, we have a shortened period. Instead of 90 days, we have 60 days to make a decision on the plat. So in action, if we don't take action on it within 60 days, it constitutes an automatic approval. So talks about objections here again. 10 business days. So we're not going to take action on this or place it on the agenda unless we received it 10 days before the committee meeting date. And then the relationship between the preliminary and final plat. We've talked about this in other meetings. If the final plat conforms substantially to the prelim, including any conditions of that preliminary approval and meets all our ordinances, it is entitled to be approved. So I just stress the point again, the preliminary plat is really, really important, because if you signify approval on that and they come back with a final in substantially the same form, it's entitled to be approved. So then we get into some recording information. 36, if the final plat isn't submitted within 36 months of the required approval of the preliminary, then the committee may refuse to approve it. So once they do that preliminary, they have 3 years to come back with the final. And that is driven by state statute. We talk about partial platting, restrictive covenants, a resubmittal of a rejected plat, and submitting a county plat. So you may remember earlier in the discussion, county plats do not require state review or approval. However, if we decide we want to send a county plat for their advisory review, we can do that. So any question on the platting process? Preliminary all the way through the final. Any questions? So then we'll get into preliminary plats 16.32. These are all basic requirements. I'm not going to get into all these. A lot of these are technical in nature, unless anybody has a question. We have a checklist. When the plat comes in, we run the plat through the checklist, make sure all these items are being complied with. Okay. Any questions on 16.32? I hope I'm not going too fast. If I am, somebody slow me down. Hearing none. 16.33, final plats. So again, Chapter 236 governs a lot of the requirements for the final plats. If you're doing a county plat, you have to have a subtitle on there, calling it a county plat, so it's very clear. Different requirements on here. Again, a lot of these are technical in nature. Certificates. We're going to give the surveyor a pre-designed block for the Register of Deeds recording information. That'll be presented at the time of preparation of the final plat, and also a approval block for the committee chair for PR&D. Any questions on 16.33 final plat requirements? In the past, the full county board would sign off on plats, county and state plats. Now the PR&D committee chair does that, performs that duty. So it's been that way for quite some time. Hearing no questions, I'm moving on to 16.34, recording of the final plat. There's not a lot here. It's basically driven by statute. One thing we put in item number 1 is the certification by the PR&D committee shall be the last certification obtained. And the way the statute reads, you have 36 months from the first approval and 12 months from the last. So being the committee is going to be the last approval, the final plat then by statute must be recorded or shall be recorded within 12 months after committee approval. If not, it'll be rendered void. Item 3 is being discussed right now. Heather Kuhn and I had a discussion yesterday on this. It involves her department. And I guess right now, this is one of those items I would just let the committee know we're probably going to flag at this point until we've had a little more discussion on this. Maybe some unintended consequences. A paper copy. So this plat is on 22 by 30 inch paper, and a lot of surveying firms, for whatever reason, don't have the infrastructure or the necessary hardware, computer hardware and things, and printers and plotters to generate that large of a document. And one thing that could happen is it's going to fall back on Heather. They're going to ask the Register of Deeds office to make a copy. She doesn't have a way to make the copy, so then it comes back, to another county department, land information, or my office to make the copy. So what I'm getting at is our request for a copy may come right back to my office to make that copy, and I think we need to sit down and have a harder internal conversation on the elements of this. So just want to make a point on that we may be certainly going to be dealing with this item number 3 before the next meeting. So any questions on 16.34? Hearing none, I'm moving on to 16.35, which is replats, vacation, or alteration of recorded plats. Standard verbiage driven by state statute. Any questions? Moving on, 16.36, improvements. More standard verbiage. Hearing no questions or comments, I'm going to move on to subchapter 4, surveying regulations and design standards, 16.40. I'm only going to address the paragraphs here that I think need attention. Certainly, if there's any questions, now would be a time to ask. Item number 5, I believe, has been removed from our working draft. I communicated with Steve Kochaver, who's the county land information officer, and we just feel this item, while it is important, it can be handled under a different ordinance, our chapter 23. So that item likely will be removed if it's not already. So I don't really have anything I want to draw attention to here under general requirements, unless there's any specific questions. Hearing none, moving on to 16.41, design standards general. There's really not there in that paragraph, so I'll move on to 16.42. This is one of the sections I had mentioned earlier on in my summary that is under construction. We do have some other county ordinances we are considering that have some more substance to them and some more measurable standards that we're hopeful will come back at a future meeting with a reworked 16.42. But while we're on this, are there any questions or maybe some guidance from the committee that we should, now would be a good time to bring forward? Or Dan, if you would like to chime in on this section, being you're going to be helping me work on this. Dan, I believe you're muted.
And I think it's important that we have the surface water drainage easements, located where the water is flowing now. And I know I've thought about how we can make sure that water stays in the same watershed. Sometimes when we create road ditches and diversions and direct this water, we actually put it in the wetland in a different place than it was before. And I think we have some negative effects. I think we need to get those drainage easements so that the water ends up in the same place that it did prior to development. And I'm not sure how to word that, but I think we can do that. And then I noticed we talk about subsurface drain here, or this is surface drain. Okay, I guess I'll just strike that. To look at that closer.
And a point I want to make is Supervisor Kinnear brought this up earlier. Our suitability standards, this would be an example where we expand on one of those suitability standards about surface drainage and erosion. Mm-hmm. So any input from any of the committee members? Like I say, this section is under construction, and it likely will look somewhat different next time you see it. If there are no other comments or questions, suggestions, we are going to move on in the interest of time. Streets and roads, 16.43. This section has been greatly expanded from our current ordinance. We've got a lot of things in here to cover. A lot of things that are new, a lot of things that are better defined. So I'm going to jump right into it. General considerations for public and private roads. Subdividers shall provide land for roads. Item A, for newly created land divisions. So the word here is new. So new land divisions, right-of-way width shall be at least 66 feet, except as provided in 16.433. So I'll just jump down to that section, which deals with private roads. So again, we're going to require 66 feet, but if you're doing a private road, you may be able to get by with, well, you will be able to get by with less given certain circumstances. And we'll get into that later. So new subdivisions or new land divisions, right-of-way width shall be 66 feet. Any municipalities may have other standards. Those need to be enforced by the municipality. All roads must be numbered pursuant to our current chapter 23 code of ordinances. Numbers will need to be assigned by the Land Information Office. Before any plat or CSM can be approved for recording, those road numbers shall be placed on the document. So that's something new. Proposed streets within county and state plats shall extend to the boundary lines unless there's a good reason for them not to. Item E, the roads have to, so these are existing now, right? We've been talking about proposed up to this point, but any existing roads have to meet the requirements of this section also. If an existing road doesn't meet, then the subdivider shall meet with the town and this committee to determine the suitability of the road and any conditions that need to be met, if any, to provide adequate access. So if you have an existing easement or an existing private road going in to service your lots, that road has to be clearly labeled, and the recording information showing the ownership of that easement has to be shown on the map. Item F is just a waiver. Number 2 are public roads. Okay, everybody's familiar with these public roads. We'll take Timber Valley. They had a street on there that was dedicated. They built that road up to town standards, and the town of Red Cedar ends up taking it over. I believe that has already happened. That's a public road. It's off the tax roll. It's built to a local municipality standards. So all roads and plats shall be public roads. So again, the word plat here, all major land divisions that are having streets in them, they have to be public roads unless the governing municipality chooses not to accept the roads. You may remember Alasian Fields. That was a plat that came before this committee real recently. That street, if you can remember going in back to a dead end cul-de-sac, was labeled on the plat as a private road. So that would not be allowed to happen under the current draft ordinance here. They would have to make, that would have had to have been a dedicated public street. And typically the town would not sign off on that plat until the street has been built to their standards, or they had some type of agreement put in place that it would be built to their standards within a certain amount of time. So is everybody clear on this? Public roads, all roads and plats shall be public roads unless the governing municipality chooses not to accept the roads. In that case, then it would have to be a private road.
But you're not allowing private roads?
We're not allowing private roads unless the governing municipality chooses not to accept the road.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Supervisor Bjork.
You're saying that private roads can be smaller, but if there's more than one owner on a private road, would that still be acceptable?
We're going to get into that next, Gary, in item 3 here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I want to answer your question, but we'll touch on that here very soon.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Nick, were you going to make a comment? It seemed to me you were.
Yeah, I was going to say the public road requirement or presumptive requirement is a plat requirement.
Mm-hmm.
And private roads are permitted in some circumstances, as Tom noted we were going to be getting into here. This was in I guess sort of in response to Dan Prestabach's question about, are private roads prohibited? Well, kind of, but not entirely. And the provisions relating to when they'd be permitted, we've already gone through one in a plat. If the municipality does not accept the dedication, or as we're about to get into.
Right. And something I noticed that line 753, public roads, it says these provisions shall apply to all private roads and easements. That isn't right. These provisions shall apply to all public roads intended to provide access. So I hope it's been corrected. And I just want to make sure if there's confusion over it, it's don't be confused. I'm to blame for that. So moving on to private roads, and hopefully Gary, Supervisor Bjork will get your question answered. If not, please bring it up again. So private roads, section 3 here, except as provided in 16.432, private roads are only allowed in certified survey maps and shall meet the following requirements. So again, private easements or private roads are only going to be allowed in the minor land divisions. They won't be allowed on a major land division. So a minimum of a 33-foot wide right-of-way is required for any private road that will provide access from a public road to not more than 2 lots. So I'm doing a 2-lot certified survey map. I can still do a 66-foot easement if I want, but if I do have the option to go lower, what it will prevent is it'll prevent somebody from putting in, say, a 20-foot wide access easement in to serve these 2 lots. They need at least 33, okay? And then a minimum of 66 feet is going to be required if you're doing up to 4. So more than 2, but no more than 4. So if I want to do a division of land with successive certified survey maps over a 5 or 6 year period, and I want to create 7 or 8 lots, eventually I'm going to be forced to build and install a public road into those 7 or 8 lots, because the private or public road is only going to be allowed for up to 4 lots. So once you hit more than 2 lots, it's going to need to be 66 feet wide and will allow you to use that to serve up to 4 lots. Now, again, I understand some local townships may have stricter requirements. You would have to comply with the more stricter requirement. Let's just say a town does not allow a private road for more than 2 lots. Well, you're not going to be able to do 4 lots, even though the county would allow it, but the town is prohibiting it. So further division of lands resulting in more than 2 lots being accessed by a private road with less than a 66-foot right-of-way will not be approved. So it's very clear. If you're doing 3 lots and you want to use your 33-foot wide easement that you just surveyed 2 lots from, we're not going to allow it. The explanation I just gave here, Supervisor Bjork, did that answer your question? I believe your microphone, you're muted, Gary, or we're not hearing you. Now you're muted, Gary.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep, that answered my question very much, because I was concerned too about the private road, and then all of a sudden you have like a lot, like more than 2 lots on a private road that they would get by with just a 66-foot or a 33, and it should be 66 foot after that. So, that was very good. I'm glad you had that put in there.
Okay, and this section of our ordinance, this whole private road section is new. I mean, our current ordinance that we're working from, we have no standards, and I get asked this quite often: how wide does my easement have to be? And I always tell them, well, I prefer you make it 66, but there are no standards. You can make it as narrow as you would like. So this will provide some standards and some direction. So item B, so private roads are not going to be able to be greater than 1,320 feet in length or the length of a quarter section or government lot. Not exceed the greater. Okay, so you can go across your 40. Will not exceed the greater of 1,320 feet or the length of a quarter. Private dead end roads, we talk about those here. I am going to be working with the highway department a little closer on this as far as requiring a certain size turnaround on a dead end road that has a cul-de-sac. We are working those details out yet. Item D, a lot of this is just standard verbiage I'm not going to get into here. I think it's all good information, but unless there's any questions, I'm going to skip over this as our time is getting near here to the end. Pardon? Yes. So Nick just brought up the description of the access easement on the map is something surveyors do now, but we can't require it actually in the draft here. So item D. well, not only that, description. Yeah. Right. Any conveyance of the lot shown on this map must be accompanied by a description for the access easement. Item H is important. Private roads, right? I mean, they're not dedicated, so they're not off the tax roll. Somebody's paying taxes on them, and it can become problematic if we don't have any standards. So we're giving developers or landowners two options. Each lot that they're creating can either hold a fractional interest in the private road by their lot ownership extending to the center line of the road, or by designating the road as an entire outlot. I do have some examples. I just don't, it's really hard to present them when I can't put them on my screen right now. So maybe next time I'll bring that back. But you basically, your ownership extends out to the center of this private road. You pay taxes out to the center line, but your ownership is subject to the right of way of others that have a right to use this privately, not public, of course, but other private landowners have an easement over your property. Taxes are accounted for. The other option is we create an outlot, and then say there's 5 people that have rights to use this. They would own a 20% interest for taxation and other items in that outlot. We don't want, the last thing we want is a piece of land hanging out there that Nick is going to get back for taxes and have to deal with. So item H is very well defined, we believe, provides 2 options. Item I is also another new area here. When 2 or more lots are accessed by a private road, an agreement for the repair and maintenance of that road must be submitted to the department at the time of their application. And then those agreements have to be recorded with the certified survey map or plat. So Nick and I each own, we each own a lot on the end of this private road. We have to enter into an agreement, and actually a lot of times these agreements are done ahead of time. These lots are vacant land. Let's just take a larger plat, right? So we got 14 lots. I record that plat. I'm going to record a maintenance document or agreement document with the plat, even though none of the lots are sold. And then what happens is, as lots become sold and conveyed off, I buy lot 1. My deed had better say that the conveyance is subject to a road maintenance agreement as recorded in document number such and such, and now I'm bound by that agreement. So these agreements need to get set up ahead of time. You wouldn't believe the phone calls we get, and I'm sure the highway department gets also, especially in the winter time. We got 2 feet of snow. My private road here isn't plowed out. The town is refusing to do it. I'm a county taxpayer. You need to come out and plow my road out. Well, the county has no responsibility to maintain that road for snow plowing, putting new gravel, any type of maintenance, paving, anything. So I think it's very important that we have these agreements put in place when there's more than 2 lots. It just makes really good sense. Item J is actually contained within state statute. No person can sell a piece of land if it abuts on a road that hasn't been accepted as a public road unless the seller informs the purchaser in writing of that fact. Okay. And then we're going to require a note under item K here to be placed on any map that has a private road. Access to the property is provided by non-exclusive easement. You're going to insert the street or road name. The road is not a public road, and the town of New Haven and Dunn County have no responsibility for snow plowing or other maintenance or for construction of a driving surface upon said easement. So it's very clear. This is a private road, and it's your own response. The town, local municipality, and county have no responsibility for anything on this. We have to wrap up here, I would say, always with the permission of the chair, but I would say in about 5 minutes or so, we need to start wrapping some things up. I don't know if we can get through the rest of, I guess I'll just go through this real quick. It'd be nice if we could get through this section just So arrangement of streets, half streets, street intersections, a lot of these are just best management practices. I don't want to trivialize them, but I'm going to move through them fairly quickly. Alignment of streets, permanent cul-de-sacs. This is where I need some input yet from the highway department on minimum right-of-way radius and also a minimum finished driving surface. So once we get that, that'll be inserted. Temporary cul-de-sacs, floodplain areas need to meet Chapter 15, the floodplain ordinance at the county, and then utility easements. So any questions on 16.43? It's a big section. It's got a lot of good information in, and I'll be honest, it took some time for Nick and I to pull all this stuff together. But we feel it's a very, one of the more important sections. I mean, the whole ordinance is important, but this section has a lot of good information in it. Any questions? Okay. I guess I will leave it up to the chair at this point if he wants to proceed or if he wants to start wrapping the.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I think we probably need to let it go for now and put it back on the agenda. It's a lot of stuff here to talk about. We've identified some areas we're going to have to revisit, and we have more to go through. But maybe for today, if that's okay with you, Tom, that's enough. Any final comments for now? Interim comments by the committee members? Okay. Are there any announcements from anybody? Then the future meeting date, July 28th. Any at this point in time, any agenda or topic suggestions? If you have any, send them to Tom and we'll sort through them and figure out how to get them back on the agenda. We have the quote unquote manure ordinance coming up. I guess that's it for today. If anything, if there's nothing else from anybody. Anything else? All right, then thanks for coming. Thanks, Diane, for taking the notes again. And oh, Jim, sorry. Yep, Jim Anderson.
No.
Oh, just goodbye? Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks. We're adjourned.
Tom, if you want to stop the live stream.
Yes.
Up on the top, you just click the down arrow next to the live on YouTube and you can stop the stream. And during this meeting,